upset. So recently we've been getting some trailers and some clips from the new live action showcasing the bending, the characters in action and everything. And I know some people are really excited about it, and we've been hearing about it for years, and seeing the new clips and everything recently have gotten people really excited about this show coming out. I just don't get it. I don't fully understand the hype behind this live action remake. And I sat there and I thought, why don't I like this in the same way that I see other people being really excited about this? And I thought about it, and I started to have feelings. So I decided to compartmentalize my emotions and decided to be a hater. No, but I just want to talk about some of the reasons why I can't fully get into the live action animated project, and I wanted to see if anyone else was, maybe feeling the same way as me. Now, of course, this isn't to like dissuade anyone from being interested or excited about it or, loving it, when it does come out, but this is more so just to kind of question why it needs to exist in the first place. By the way, welcome back to my channel. I'm Hayes. Let's get right into this video. Now, the first thing I want to bring up, and I think the obvious one, is why do we need a retelling of the exact same story that we've already seen? Now, with the recent news, we've been told that some scenes are going to be a one-to-one with the original series, while some are going to be remixes and take a little bit more free creative liberties. Stating that they didn't start the show in the same place as the original, just to also kind of emphasize that this is its own thing. However, at the end of the day, we still do know kind of where this story will end up. We know the characters and their progression, their dynamics, their development, the things that they went through, the different characters that come up and everything. We know the general story by now. And I sat and I thought, and I'm just like, why do we need another live action version of this when it's not going to match or supersede the quality of the original series? And to be honest, I'm sure a lot of us know that it's not going to match or super, and we don't go into it with those expectations, but I guess it kind of leaves to where, why do we need a live action version when we as the audience kind of understand that going into it, that this isn't going to meet those same exact kind of traits and characteristics of the original? I don't know, I just kind of feel like it exists within a similar vein as the other live adaptations that have been coming out recently. A lot of them been coming out recently in the past few years to bank on nostalgia. Now, for those of us that just want to watch this, casually, like we're not putting too many expectations on it, and just want to go into it, just watch the show and everything, I can completely understand that, aspect about it. And me personally, I'm going to watch the show because I'm, curious myself as to, what it's going to be like. Honestly, if Netflix was going to have this series, I think it would have been a better idea to create a new story, or maybe even create like maybe some avatars from the past, explore their stories, or maybe have like an anthology series where you have different seasons, explore different, avatars throughout time, and we can get like little mini episodes, so kind of in a similar way to what Legend of Korra was at first before it got fleshed out into a full series. I still would like to have seen that in animated form, but honestly, if they're going with live action, avatar theme and ideas and shows, I think that would have been actually a better idea to do versus just a retelling of what we already seen. But to be honest, more than anything, I would more understand the whole hype behind this if this was kind of like the most or the only Avatar series, information, any shows, movies, or whatever that we were going to get for the foreseeable future. But with the announcement in February 2021, with the original creators and executive producers of the original series coming out to create an entire Avatar Studios, like we have a whole division dedicated now to further fleshing out this universe, making movies, shows, comics, maybe merch, other games and everything. We have the adult Aang movie, we have the upcoming Zuko movie, we have the Avatar Kyoshi movie coming out, as well as the new Avatar series coming out next year, hopefully. So many possibilities for new storylines, characters, themes, ideas, lore, world building. So many things that we can explicitly tie to animation with how expressive and animated, no pun intended, characters can be. The way characters move, the bending, the fight choreography, the effects, dynamic angles, and how high fantasy this universe is would just play out better in animation, because you don't have the same restrictions as you do in live action. Also, Appa and Momo look a little bit scary. They look a little bit scary. I'm sorry. What are we gonna get with the tone? With how expressive the characters were in the original series, how is that gonna translate to live action? In live action, you don't have the same ability to have the exaggeration that you can in animated forms. Some of the scenes within the trailers, I do see them trying to go for a similar style of humor as the original, but something about it seems slightly off. From a little that we've seen so far, it seems to be a lot with especially Sokka's actor, and I think it's especially the delivery of these lines. Something about the delivery just is falling a little flat for me, and I feel like Sokka should be a little bit more expressive and animated, but we can get on Sokka in a minute. You can go for a slightly more serious and less animated tone, but I do think that that cuts into a little bit of the charm and what makes the original series work and connect with us in such a way that years later we're still feeling the impact of it. But when you go for that style in live action, you can run the risk of it looking weird or just not hitting the same as it does in the cartoon. And it's not to say that high fantasy and magic systems can't work in a live action setting. We actually have shows like Game of Thrones that, especially within its later seasons, had a higher budget. But even then, I've been told that Game of Thrones didn't add as many magical or high fantasy elements as it did within the original book series, probably due to limitations when it comes to live action mediums and using CGI. I think we should also factor in the differences in high budget between movies and series. With movies, you're able to better make use of the budget and also fine tune a lot more things because you have maybe 2.5 hours max runtime. But with a series, you have to expand the budget, the time, the energy, and work through multiple seasons and keep that same consistent quality. Or cut things out as a lot of live action adaptations of certain books and media tends to do. And from what I'm seeing of some of the cinematic and visual shots within this movie, it looks really good. I love the shot of Aang escaping the iceberg with a beam of light blasting into the sky. And some of the costuming is pretty good and pretty detailed as well, which I do like, but that's also just could have been used for, another story. Overall, I can appreciate that they sorta, kinda tried a little bit to find people that looked like the characters. When it comes to casting, I can imagine it's hard to find the perfect blend of people who not only look like the characters, but also can perform the bending movements, the fight choreography in a realistic and dynamic way, and act well enough to give us the heart, emotion, and the tone of these characters. Also addressing the elephant turtle in the room. Why is he white?
Oh my god, Karen, you can't just ask people why they're white.
No, seriously, didn't they find out that this guy lied about his heritage pretty early on within the actual filming of? They could have recasted him Also, this is the first season. We're not as attached to this actor as this character yet. So I'm just do that before you then get people invested into this character and this specific actor who plays this character, They really could have recasted him, but they didn't because they didn't care. Which brings me to the Water Tribe casting. And I get it. They tried to find indigenous people to play these roles, and they did a fairly good job of it from the majority of the cast that we've seen. It's just a shame that so often characters that are darker skinned tend to be played by lighter characters. Yes, I get it, they're indigenous and that's great for them, but if darker skinned indigenous people can't even get the roles that were made for them, then where are they going to be able to find their roles at? Not even just Sokka and Katara, though general Water Tribe casting is very interesting. It's giving me just a little bit of M. Night Shyamalan, just a little zip, no shade. Not gonna lie though, they ate that photo shoot. That photo shoot ate that up. They ate that. And also the actor who plays Zuko. But I'm low-key seeing stuff that's reminding me of Shyamalan, and I'm just where have we seen this before? I know at the time of this recording, we only have but so much footage to actually, talk about when it comes to the bending and the fight choreography. But does no one else see this? Why do they move like that? Why do the special effects look like that? I'm gonna reserve full judgment until we get the actual series. However, just from what I'm seeing, it's not fully getting me as excited as I feel like I should be for the bending. There's some shots in the trailer that do look pretty good, but I can already see some slight issues with timing and impact of certain elements in certain scenes that we saw in the trailer. Certain issues with choreography or the way the characters moved that makes it feel a bit like the elements are kind of put on top of the scene rather than being an extension of the characters themselves. I can give a bit of grace when it comes to Katara's movements because this is season 1. This is when, she doesn't know the bending form. She's still pretty new to water bending in general, so I don't mind that. But Iroh, Why does he look like that while bending? That's not very Dragon of the West. Some of the bending with Boomy in that scene looks a bit off, which, Boomy, by the way, this is also a little bit of the limitations when it comes to a live action medium. In the show, he's portrayed as this super unnaturally buff old dude who's performing these huge grand feats. But with the live action, you get a still buff but more toned down version of this character. But with characters like Boomy and even Toph, how are they gonna do Toph? I'm really wondering that, because how are you going to translate that fight that Toph had at that first episode, the Blind Bandit, where she fought that whole earth bending like battalion? How are they going to do that in live action? How are they going to get the timing, the effects, the choreography, how are they going to do that? I just don't know if they can. I know this is only the first season and Toph's probably not going to show up until the second season, but I'm just really concerned and confused on how they expect to really get the effect, because Toph, you can feel the impact and weight of Toph's attacks when she does this, and I just don't know if it's going to be able to be translated well in a live action medium with CGI effects. And that's the thing with CGI effects, you might lose the impact that certain things are supposed to have, like how heavy or physical an element is supposed to be. I think a good example of this is airbending, actually. Airbending may look a little bit easier because, it's not a visible element in the same way that the others are. And for some examples that could be true, but because of that, you have to rely on the impact that it has on the environment around it. How are things moving in accordance to this bending? Within both shows, we get how air can actually have a hefty impact with quick jabs or strikes or full-on blows. And we see how the air impacts the environment around characters. And with the live action, I'm not entirely optimistic fully about the way that some of the effects are gonna look. I do like the scene with Aang airbending on that bridge. He kind of like knocked a whole battalion off. I like more things like that because some scenes that I've seen him airbending, it looks like the environment isn't really affected in the same way. And also, this is just in general, I'm not the biggest fan of how live action tends to do characters being knocked back at a high velocity, at a high speed. It tends to not look great because you can't just sling human beings around at high speed. It also takes a lot for the effects not to look CGI'd in the first place, especially with fire and water. Does it look better than the movie Who Shall Not Be Mentioned in the Ba Sing Se? Yes, but that's also not a hard bar to cross. I also just can't fully trust this project in the way that I want to because of the creators leaving, so not having the creative freedom and the input that I feel like deserve, because they are the people who made the original source material, or part of the people who made the original source material in the first place. Happening once again to another live adaptation of The Last Airbender. Overall, I can see some of the appeal of this show since 2020 and lockdown, especially since both series, The Last Airbender and Legend of Korra, have been put on Netflix. There's been this huge craze around the Avatar fandom and the universe and everything, and I'm really excited about that. And some of the shots and some of the scenes do look pretty good. And like I said, that they said that they were probably trying to remix some scenes and add like a little bit of their own version onto things. I can see why people are excited about anything Avatar related in general. But me personally, I just feel like it's much more exciting seeing what the actual creators have actually cooked up within the Avatar studios. The world is so expansive and intricate, the power system and its cultural ties are so interesting, it's so fun, it has complex characters, political systems, so many things that make this series what it is. We have 10,000 years worth of stories to tell. Why keep telling the same story that we already know and love when there's so much more to explore? So while I was editing, some more information came out of a recent interview that came out on January 30th, detailing a few of the things that the main cast had wanted to mention. And we can start with Aang. Them saying Aang and the gang don't seem to go on as many side adventures like they do in the original show. Quote saying, "We essentially give him the vision of what's going to happen, and he says he's going to have to go to the Northern Water Tribe to stop this from happening." Which, the vision aspect in and of itself is concerning, because why incorporate visions and what sounds to be like prophecies of the future? It also seems to take away from what partially made the past lives so important to Aang. Aang was clueless, when it came to being the Avatar and what that meant. The past lives helped in providing valuable information to Aang about the Fire Lord, the war, Sozin's Comet, and why he actually needs to train in the elements quickly in the first place. But I'll reserve full judgment for that. And what I wanted to mention is that this sounds like it's possibly going to contradict what Aang's character and his development was. Aang was 12 years old, a kid, and he acted like such. Part of what makes Aang's development through the end of the series what it is how Aang grew up and was forced to take on this responsibility, which matured him. I know they're saying that they're going to keep some of the same attributes, but I think taking away some of the moments where it seems slice of life takes away from not only what makes Aang Aang, but also leading to further development. Now with Sokka's character, they're changing him by saying, I feel like we also took out that element of how sexist Sokka was, essentially saying some of his attitudes towards women would be iffy or wouldn't fly. Mind you, Sokka's attitude towards women didn't even fly in the show. Girls were constantly challenging him mentally and physically on his views on how girls and women were supposed to be. Like how the show actively, from the very beginning, showed the kind of behavior and ideas were misogynistic, and Sokka grew more and more respect for the women around him, so I'm not really sure what they're talking about. Katara, Suki, and Toph, in a way, all helped to challenge his ideas every time he stepped out of line. Part of Sokka's character is that he grew up as the only male of his tribe while the rest of his men fought in war. He had this heavy idea of what a man was supposed to be, because he had to hold all this masculinity and protectiveness over his whole village. And aside from that, a big reason we find out why Sokka is like that is because of how water tribes typically seem to function. As we see from the Northern Tribe, men and women seem to hold very specific roles in their cultures and don't seem to stray too far out of that. Northern Water Tribe being quite sexist, reserving all real waterbending and combat training to the men, while the women only learned healing, which is literally the entire storyline of Katara and the North Pole arc. And speaking of Katara, for her character, they're saying there are certain roles that Katara did that they didn't want to do here, stating some gender issues that didn't quite translate from the cartoon. Mind you, Katara's importance as a character when talking about those themes is her combating these traditional ideas and limitations of her gender, not being held down by other people's perceptions of what she can be, which, like I stated, was a huge part of Katara's character during the Northern Tribe arc, challenging and eventually earning the respect of Master Pakku and becoming a waterbending master, which wouldn't have happened if she didn't challenge Pakku and the Northern Tribes for the misogyny. That moment was the climax of that part of Katara's arc, challenging the misogyny of her tribes. I don't entirely know what they mean besides that aspect, because are they trying to take away some of her more motherly or emotional aspects about herself? They didn't really need to do that if that's what they're implying, but we can see the actual show when it comes out to see. All in all, what I'm trying to say with all of this is that these creators don't seem to really understand why these characters were the way that they were, and why it's important for the characters the way that they become in the end. And when it seems like you don't fully understand the assignment, that doesn't put a lot of faith into your interpretation of these characters or the development of this story. But yeah, that was pretty much my thoughts so far on the live action. Of course, I'm probably going to watch it because I am genuinely curious to see what it's going to be about and, how it's going to be. But overall, I'm just not excited for it. I'm really not. I'm so much more looking forward to the stuff that Avatar Studios has created, and I'm so excited for the movies and the shows that are going to be coming. But yes, thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.